Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Way. Today, we're going to be talking about the burning question on everybody's mind. Is living in an RV cheaper?
And the short answer to that is not necessarily. While living in an RV can give you the option to have a lower cost of living, it is not always the case. So we're going to be talking to you about the main things that really are going to dictate if you're keeping your cost of living down while traveling full-time.
Let's get right into it.
Alright, so the first major factor that's going to play a role on if you can keep your cost of living low while living in an RV is really just going to come down to location. It's no secret that wherever you live is really going to dictate a lot of prices, whether it be through rent, through taxes, or just, affordability of other types of things like groceries and gas and all of that. But what we're referring to really is more specifically RV park prices, or what you're going to be charged to actually have your RV parked somewhere. So to give a good example of the kind of range that we're talking about here, we stayed in a RV park in Biloxi, Mississippi, right off the beach for $400 a month. We also stayed in San Diego, California, right off the beach for over $700 a week. So that's a drastic difference in price, and you probably are more familiar with San Diego as a travel vacation spot, whereas less people are really familiar with Biloxi. It's not as a high demand area that people really go to. They were both beautiful spots and we really enjoyed both of our stays, but the price difference was crazy. So those are kind of two extremes. There are more middle of the road options, so let's discuss those.
In order to do that, let's rewind a little bit and take a peek back at our history. Back before we hit the road full time, we stayed about 40 minutes outside of downtown Denver on a private lot. And that was a non-full hookup site, and we paid about $700 a month plus electric. So we actually had to wheel our holding tank up to their dump station every time we wanted to dump the RV. So that can kind of be a pain. Whereas the most recent time in Denver, we actually got a full hookup site for around $800 a month. Both of these were actually on the lower end of the spectrum in the Denver market. On average, they range from around $1,000 to $1,200 a month in that area.
The main thing to keep in mind here is that prices are going to reflect demand. So if you're staying in an area that's really popular or a high traffic vacation spot, your price is going to be higher than if you are staying somewhere a little bit more off the beaten path. So to give you kind of a clearer picture of our experience, our first year traveling, we tried to average about $600 a month per RV spot. Now, we were able to hit that number pretty consistently. Some months we went over, some months we went under, and we just tried to keep that as like an average that we had in mind. So if we spent more money one month, I would definitely try to find a cheaper site the following month, or what have you, depending on what state we were staying in that was more or less reasonable of an ask. It can even depend on city that you're staying in. So, biggest recommendation is even if there's a city you want to go to, try staying 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside of that city, because I guarantee you the prices will be cheaper. You'll be probably in a better area for an RV park actually, and yeah, you'll be able to keep your cost of living just a little bit lower. Since COVID-19, we've been paying about $800 a month, so that's $200 more than what we were looking at our first year per month. Now, these numbers might sound high to people that are more into boondocking and stuff like that, but we both have jobs where we have to have really good internet speeds, connections, and all that good stuff. So we prioritize staying at full hookup RV sites. If boondocking is something that you're interested in, then that is definitely a way to keep your prices as low as possible, even $0 if you want to stay on some BLM land. That's a topic for another day.
Another aspect that will play a huge role in how much money you're spending every month is the time of year that you're going and the duration that you're going to be staying. So a lot of those seasonally popular areas will have a high demand for RV traffic and will inherently have a higher cost for your stay. So a good example of that would be the snowbird states like Florida and Arizona. During the winter months, they get a really high volume of RVers coming through. So RV parks can pretty much charge whatever they want, and they fill up. So the demand is high.
So the other aspect of what Adam's talking about, like he said, is the duration of your stay. So not just the time of year that you're going somewhere, but how long you actually plan on staying at that particular location. So really what that comes down to is the actual rates that RV parks and places charge when you're staying somewhere, either for a daily rate, a weekly rate, or a monthly rate. So that being said, you know, we've stayed places, generally speaking, a minimum of 2 weeks, or typically we try to stay somewhere at least a month so that we can get the monthly rate, because a lot of RV parks will charge about 30 to 40% of the monthly cost just for 1 week. So when you're staying somewhere for 2 weeks, you're almost paying a full rate. We'll be paying like almost like 90%, or at some parks the same rate almost that we would be staying if we were to just stay a month. Now, obviously sometimes that's dictated on, you know, where we're trying to get to or whatever's going on, and that's why we've had to do that. But, you know, if you're really on your own schedule and you're able to do it, staying somewhere for a month as opposed to you know, just a couple of nights or a week is really going to keep your costs substantially lower.
An add-on to that is when you're moving less, you're spending less money in gas mileage. So our RV gets about 7 miles to the gallon on a good day. And you know, that really adds up quickly. For our 70-gallon tank, we're pretty much getting 300 to 400 miles out of it. So on a travel day, you're spending easily $200 to $300, if not more. So by staying stationary in one spot, you can vastly minimize the amount of money that you're spending every month. So the quicker you go, the more money you spend, basically.
So the last major factor that we're going to talk about for what's going to dictate the cost of living while living in an RV or traveling full-time is going to actually just be pretty straightforward. It's the actual rig that you are living in. So obviously rigs have different prices, whether you're buying really new or really old, or what quality of rig you're going for, and you know, even what style. Are you going for a fifth wheel, a trailer, or an RV, motorhome, or a van? You know, those things are going to really dictate price. The big standout factor that's going to dictate monthly cost of living, though, is going to be, can you buy your rig outright? Obviously, if you can buy it outright and you can avoid monthly payments, that is going to substantially reduce your cost of living going forward into this lifestyle. Obviously, that's not an option for everyone, though, and I know for us, it really wasn't an option. We did not have enough money saved up to just buy an RV outright. We were pretty young when we decided that we wanted to start doing this. So we ended up financing our RV. So let's talk about some of the tips that we can give you guys for keeping cost of living low based off of your rig selection.
One of the main factors that's really going to help keep your cost of living down is don't buy new. And when I say new, I don't necessarily mean recent RV, because there's a lot of really great RVs out there, but don't buy it off the lot. There's not many assets out there that I can think of that depreciate faster than an RV. So why not capitalize on that depreciation and buy a nice used RV for literally a fraction of the price?
And when you do decide that you want to purchase a rig, regardless of what year you decide to purchase, getting financing through a credit union as opposed to a bank is going to make a huge difference in the actual interest that you're going to be paying on a rig. So if you don't already have an account set up with a credit union and you're just kind of getting started learning about this, definitely look into some credit unions in your area and get the ball rolling on that, because I promise you, if you go into your bank right now, talk to them about the loans that you're going to qualify for an RV, and then go into the nearest credit union, and I guarantee you the loans that they're going to offer you and the rates and just really everything that it comes down to is going to be substantially better than if you're trying to go through a bank. To add on to that just a little bit too, whether or not you're going through a private seller or a dealership, whatever you want to do, there's benefits and drawbacks to both, obviously. But one thing I will say that is a benefit with purchasing a rig from a private seller is a lot of times you have your own flexibility of decision making when it comes to how you want to finance or purchase that vehicle. There are a lot of dealerships that will only let you finance through their own approved banks, so you're not going to be as much in the driver's seat, and you're going to be kind of more at the whims of what the dealership is wanting you to do rather than what you might have gone in there with the intention of doing.
We really didn't have a good experience with the dealership that we tried to go through. We were in the market to purchase an RV, and it actually wasn't even as nice as this one, but we sat down with a salesperson, agreed to a 10-year loan for $250 a month, and when we actually came back to pick up the keys a week later, we had gotten off work and drove an hour to get there, and when we got there, we found that the payment was double what we had agreed to, and we were understandably upset. And that's why when we went with the private seller, we were able to actually work with the credit union and understand the different loan options and why we got the interest rate that we did, why we got the monthly payment that we did. And we were able to get our monthly payment down to just over $300, which was much more reasonably in our price range.
And that was for a 5-year loan, so half the duration. Basically, point being, obviously this rig was a little bit cheaper than the one at the dealership, but that being said, this was actually a better rig than the one that we were looking.
Much nicer.
Yeah, and the one at the dealership was twice the cost for a way, like if we were to find this rig at a dealership, they would have charged much more for it, like substantially more. Point being, when you're looking at older models, sometimes it is better to go through a private seller because you're not getting upcharged for all these other fees that the dealership's going to tack on, and like we're pointing out right now, you get more flexibility of who you want to finance through and how you want to actually make that purchase. That's not always going to be the case when you're going through a dealership. That just happened to be our experience at this one location. There's always benefits and drawbacks to both. The major thing that we're pointing out here is really just that you might have more flexibility with a private seller and if you're working with a credit union versus going the other route.
Outside of that, make sure that you're always weighing the quality of an RV that you intend to purchase. Newer is not always better, and price doesn't always reflect quality of an RV. Those newer RVs are definitely built with a warranty in mind, so if you intend to do that, then an RV repair shop is definitely going to be a staple in your future.
I think essentially what we're saying is if you can find a rig that isn't super new, that has been, reasonably...
It's had the warranty work done.
Well, that's had the warranty work done, but if it looks like whoever owned it previous to you took care of it, right? If they were doing the, proper maintenance and things that they should be doing to ensure that it's staying, well maintained, that they were checking their roof, there's not leaks, there's, checking the walls, stuff like that. Things that aren't necessarily going to be obvious at first glance, that if you're really looking through the rig and you can see that the quality is there, then that's going to be a better purchase than something that just looks shiny on the outside.
Also, another add-on that's super helpful when you're trying to lower your monthly cost is solar. It will not only help lower the amount of energy you're pulling on a metered site, but it allows you that flexibility to, when you're traveling, actually be able to boondock more and be more free with the places that you're able to stay. I can't count the amount of times that RV parks that we're staying at long term, I see people pull in for a night just so that they can use electric, in which case we're actually really self-sufficient and able to go for an undetermined amount of time, really, without plugging into power at all.
Yeah, we do stay at RV parks when we're like stationary for a couple weeks or a month, but when we're traveling to and from locations, we have gone long distances and we've been able to boondock in those kind of middle times where we're just traveling. We can park, on BLM land, we can park in Walmart parking lots, we can do that, and we still watch our TV at night, we still run our microwave. We have a solid setup with our solar. Our rig did not come with the solar, but it was definitely an investment that we made, and a quality one at that. It was definitely a major thing that I would recommend to anyone that is trying to keep costs low. It definitely pays for itself very quickly. I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. Obviously, there is so many more factors that come into play with this topic. We will probably do more videos on this topic going forward, but you know, we really just wanted to touch on the main basics, right? Location, time and duration, and the type of rig that you choose. Obviously, those are some really big factors in dictating what your actual cost of RV living is going to look like. I think what the main takeaway, you know, the question that we had at the beginning was, is RV living cheaper? And we said not necessarily. I think the reason we're saying that is basically that RV living gives you that flexibility where your cost of living can be cheaper, but you know, it's kind of one of those lifestyles where it could be on the more luxurious end and it's not necessarily cheaper, but usually people want it to be. So these are kind of the main factors that we're looking at in order to make it so.
All right, guys. Well, if you have any questions or you have any tips of your own, feel free to leave those in the comments below. This has been our experience, but you know, we always want to hear more about your experiences. We appreciate you making it to the end of this video. We will see you next week. And as always,
thanks for traveling with us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.